Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be reading a little bit. This is a fresh presentation, so pardon me. It's just a little bit helpful. I don't have everything memorized yet. So, welcome to our presentation of the Infinite World game and heart-based technologies. Before we get going, I just want to say thanks to the event organizers here for putting on this amazing event and coordinating everything. We know how challenging that can be. So thank you so much, and thank you, David, for inviting us after you met our friend Mona to share our passion for socio-technologies. So we've never presented this before in public, actually. So we're in for a bit of a risky ride here. This is a really huge and comprehensive and multifaceted innovation that we're part of, and we're going to try to do our best to cover as much as possible over the next 45 minutes. And Angie and I are also representing a small core team of 6 people, and this presentation today is kind of through the lens of us, because we're kind of in this emergent space, and we were charged with creating this new presentation. So this project is also about a lot more than technology and gamification. We just want to share that because it tends to come off that way. The technology and gamification are really devices to help the planetary transformation of an entire paradigm. So you might have some expectations of what transformation looks like, but bear in mind, it may not resemble much of what we're going to share today. So we invite you to let go of any expectations for an hour and take a ride with us through time.
Hello, everybody. Could everybody hear me clearly? Yeah. Okay, so we're in the year 2040, or should I say we're time travelers from the year 2040. And why we're doing that today is we have been working on this for over 7 years as a community. And often we talk as architects and engineers, and people are a bit like, it's like listening to a computer programmer talk about a project. So we took a lot of feedback, and what we're going to do today is our first attempt to describe the Infinite World game as an experience. And in order to do that, because it's not yet built, we're just kind of going to play with time. We've come from the future, and we're going to share with you what it's like.
Alrighty, so we found ourselves here in 2019 with all of you, and it's definitely a different paradigm than where we've come from. I know that you guys are used to probably presentations where people introduce themselves and what business organization they come from or what roles they might be playing. You've got this ontology here: competition, money, intellectual property, democracy, business, profit. So we're happy to be back in this space for a little bit while, and also looking forward to getting back to 2040 at some point very soon.
So this lovely gentleman just said, "Where are you from?" And I kind of did that. Well, how do I even explain? I'm from a universal fractal organism. I'm not from a project, I'm not from a company, I'm not from a business. I'm from something you probably haven't heard of before here on planet Earth. The unified fractal organism is also known as Together. It's a nice friendly name we use for that. Not everybody can really understand what a UFO is. And for the kind of the biologists and the scientists in the room, you might describe us as a planetary superorganism. So what that means will become evident as we share our journey with you. So here we are. Who are we? We're crew members of the UFO. My name's Andrea. Obviously, there it is, but I also get known as Tan. And I have a number of avatars. So instead of a job, I have these avatars, and they describe multiple roles that I play in the UFO. I don't just have one job. I have many roles depending on what's needed in the now. And I also am responsible for these holospheres you'll see here called meta-architecture, ergonomic cybersphere, and coherence and interactive currents. That's quite a lot of jargon. I'll explain more what that means. But those holospheres are a bit like the departments in our organization. I'll explain more in time, but that's a little bit about me. And
I'm Brett, the Rhythm and Resources Navigator, the Crypto Poet, and the Visionary Troubadour. And some of the roles and specialties I play in the UFO are spiritual philanthropy, resonance recruiting, and ergonomic cybersphere. And I just want to point out these 2 images here, these 2 circles. We'll talk later, they're called holons in our system. These are not just mock-ups, these are part of the alpha software technology that we already have in 2019. So this is part of the gaming system and the technology.
It will we'll share a lot about this word synergy as we're talking about our technologies, but there's a little bit there from our technology pointing out our relationships. This will come up a lot as we're speaking about the Infinite World game, because everything is relational. I think I just heard the speaker talking about the binary way that programmers think in Silicon Valley, you know, ones and zeros on and off. The infinite world game as an entire architecture is explored through the realm of relationality. So here, just to point out, our technology's pointed out that Brett and I have a resonance ship. We're married. And there's more that will come up as we go along. So as we've come here to present to you this concept of the IWG that was on the screen at the beginning. That stands for Infinite World Game. And often when we say we're creating an infinite world game, people think of games. They either think of computer games or they think of Monopoly. And it kind of tends to put in a box what they think that we're doing. But we used Infinite World Game when we created this experience to represent, in a playful way, the idea of a new system. So if you think about the current system that humanity is in 2019, it is a kind of game. It's called capitalism. And we operate in a very particular way now. Is there anybody in the audience here that's familiar with systems theory, which is an emerging discipline in this time? Well, systems theory tells us that if we want to change the results, we have to change the system. And humanity was having incredibly difficult challenges at this time, and it kept trying to change the results. We had a different premise, a different starting point. We wanted to change the system, and we called it a game.
All right, and this is the amazing, awesome Bucky Fuller, 20th century legend, who was very inspirational and looked back very fondly in the year 240 upon. And he talked about the design science approach to solving the world's problems, about whole systems thinking and whole systems design. And he actually created something called the world game, which was trying to make life work for 100% of humanity without anyone actually losing. So you might say in 2040, we've only just taken his ideas to the next logical level. And this is one of our teammates named Helia. She's in Cairo right now. We just wanted to bring some of our teammates into this space. So this is just a 1-minute clip of her, one of her perspectives on a gaming. Hopefully it works. Oh.
Uh-oh, the sound is gone.
Can you?
How did we turn it on earlier?
You just have to go down here to the video.
No, it's coming up on the monitor. There's no sound at all.
Okay, we'll try this for 10 more seconds, and then we'll move on. Is it?
Everything looks good here.
Okay, we'll just move on. So it doesn't.
Oh well, you got to.
Well, Mona was sharing something about how really all of reality and all of our systems are games. There's things that are invisible and visible, and we don't really talk about them all the time, and we don't usually look at them as a game, but technically they're made up of game-like elements, and capitalism, democracy, and money, and the systems are all really just rules and games on one level.
So based on this idea that we were going to change the game, we started designing a whole new game. And this gives you an overview of the game structure. It's a reality game, by the way, and so this is why it's going to be quite fun trying to share with you all how we've designed a whole game for reality. But we're going to give it a shot. So every game, you could say, has a point to it. There's a point to playing the game. So what is the point of the Infinite World game? It is what we call the prime meta mission. The prime meta mission being for all of humanity to be healthy, thriving, expanding, creative expressions of life. That is the aim of the Infinite World game.
Can I just share something, Andrea? The reason we use the word meta, M-E-T-T-A, that is a word that comes from Sanskrit that has a few different meanings. One of them is a prayer for unconditional love. It's also friendliness and kindness. So, and it also is to a meta, of above and beyond. So it's very important that unconditional love is part of really the foundation of anything that we're doing and that we want to bring into the world. So we like to play on words of the meta mission.
Now, anybody here now heard of game theory? So game theory, what we look at is like, what are the dynamics and also some of the deeper complexities of creating a game, and is it possible to create different types of game with different outcomes? The current game here in 2019, as far as we remember, is a win-lose game. There are people that are winning, and there are people that are losing. It's evident, yeah? We have people that are starving, and we have people that are wealthy and healthy. So we wanted a new game theory, and we called it an infinite win game theory. this game was going to be about infinite win, what that means is everybody who's playing is winning together. There are no losers, sorry. So it's a different type of game. And, you know, this is a conference for scientists and mystics. He's a mystic, he's a scientist, and they were both talking about the same things at that time. You know, in the universe of physics, everything is a seamless whole. It's one whole system. And if we're not thinking about the universe as a whole system, there are things that we do that impact the rest of the system. And, you know, if we think that that's not happening, we're ignorant. So, for example, if we're farming one part of the world and we're using lots of resources and we're not thinking that that's affecting the whole biosphere, we're not thinking in this kind of wholeness, oneness way. So we are inspired by David Bohm and his concept of a hollow movement, and we declared ourselves a hollow movement. And our game had this concept of prior unity, that everything in the game was interconnected. You'll see this come out, so there's none of this binary thinking. Everything we do in this game, we think about its impact on everything else. So as the mystics have told us for aeons, it's a game of oneness. The game laws. So I'm going to quote again another mystical scientist here, one of the people that really inspires here at the game, Ervin Laszlo. And as he says here, we are beginning to see the entire universe as a holographically interlinked network of energy and information. So when we're creating this game, we have to think about the universe in this way. These are the building blocks of our game. We can't get away from the fact it's a living system. Human beings have designed systems, the systems we were in, as though we were machines. We're just producers. But we're alive, we're full of energy. So the laws of our game really took into account that human beings were alive and living systems. The game universe. Now, this is probably the most dense part of the presentation. And I'm going to ask for an indication here. Who is familiar with holographic thinking and fractals and thinking of the universe as this one interconnected fractal system? Okay, awesome. So I feel a bit safer now. So here I'm going to go for this. So the way we designed this universe was not in the way it was designed before. There were businesses, and there were houses, and there were nations, and they're all separate, yeah? They all have their own little universes. We reconceived of the whole planet as one holonic network. Anybody know what a holon is? Ken Wilber fans, yes. So holons represents the idea that everything is simultaneously a whole and a part. You know, my eye is simultaneously a part of my head. I can't take my eye out my head. It won't work unless I acknowledge it's part of a bigger thing called the head. So we organized our entire living system as a network of holons. The second thing we did is we said any holon that is a human or a group of humans, there's a lot of jargon here, yeah, we're from the future, bear with us, are holoships. Now, what is a holoship? A holoship, for the mystics here, is just a way of describing your body as having 7 core functions, the 7 chakras. So we know that we have these 7 chakras, and if they're not in balance, we're not really thriving as a living system. So we need to make sure that we're balanced in the heart, and we're grounded, and we can communicate well. These are 7 core functions of a life system, and if one of them is blocked, we get sick and we don't perform well. So we were looking at individuals as holoships, but then we also were saying a community is a holoship. So let me see if I can translate this for you. When you go to work, it's just a business, and your job there is to act. That's it, most of the time. Have you produced the results, Andrea? But what about all the other things we do when we're together, like relationships, just being together, also being a community, also the time to be, also like how we communicate together. These are also functions of a collective system. So the way we organized our communities was also the way we were organizing ourselves, and what that meant is we were looking at our interrelations holistically. So to give you an example, because it's quite abstract, our little community at the minute doesn't say, well, Chris, you're sick. Your only job here is to produce something. So you're no longer relevant here. Please go get a different job. We say, oh, you're really not really balanced in that root chakra. And it's our job as a holoship to get you balanced. So we think of ourselves holistically. We don't just privilege one way of being. That was a difficult one. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody.
Oh, just
The
pull out.
computer agreed.
It's okay. Just pull that out and put it back in.
Yeah.
It'll come back on in just a second. Alrighty, so what we were starting to see in all of our designs here and all of the systems and structures was really the marriage of science and soul, or the marriage of mysticism and objectivity. We were basically out to preserve the timeless wisdoms of the East and the West with the cutting edge research of the 21st century here in 2018, 2019. And then we began to implement and reveal the relationships of what's called the microcosm to the macrocosm, which is a very famous Hermetic principle and very ancient set of wisdom, that everything inside is outside, everything that is outside is inside. There's really no separation between those two things. We also started to see sacred geometry, like the seed of life and the flower of life and Metatron's cube. All these things started revealing themselves in our systems and our patterns. And it was really exciting because it was truly a new space where the Large Hadron Collider or string theory was enacting with mysticism, with subjectivity, with poetry. And together these things actually created what was a truly unified theory. Because we also realized there could never be a unified theory, only based on mathematical equations and equipment in a collider somewhere. How could that ever be actually a unified theory? Unified theory has to combine subjective as well as objective. So it was a beautiful time to be alive, really. Sorry, my computer crushed there. Okay. So what's also important to share with all of you is that the Infinite World game, again, it is a real-life game. It's not just some VR simulation or some kind of multiplayer online game. Although technology is certainly prominent and an important facet of what it is, it's only really a complement to being alive on life, in nature as well. We therefore lived in what we called synergy hubs and infinity hubs. And these were physical community environments, from farms to cities to intentional communities to buildings to houses. It didn't matter. There was a network, and there is a network of these spaces all over the planet. And these are basically beautiful environments where all the crew members and the players of the game live and play on these holoships. The status quo arrangements like office and commuting and home, they weren't really conducive to the type of creation that we wanted to create, which was holistic and thriving and beyond boundaries. So there already were several test runs just recently. In Rotterdam in 2016, there was a Synergy Hub that was gifted. All the bills were paid. It was a gift to our projects and other projects where we started working on some of this technology and, more importantly, living together in a space with about 100 people, practicing and learning what happens when people follow their passions, what happens when people get together and self-organize. So this has been an ongoing journey really since 2016, so going on 24 years now.
I think the other thing this is just reminding me of, I forgot to share with you a crucial concept when I talked about the game universe, and this idea of ergonomic. So we currently live in an economic world, yeah? And that's based on a certain way of looking at reality, that really the focus on the production of goods and the distribution of them, and how we manage that is very materialistically focused. We shifted to ergonomic, acting like organisms that were looking to be optimal at life, and that was really the big shift. And what these hubs did was allowed us to live ergonomically as living systems, like the office is built for one function mainly.
And of course, we needed our own time system and our own calendar system. You can't really shift perspectives and step into a new consciousness or a new plane of reality without really speaking to time and calendars. So what we did is we created our own fractal-based clock. It was a base 6. And what it did was, it first of all got us off of status quo and what we were used to in habits. There's a lot of things that time does with us. In a lot of ways it's manipulated and used for pretty nefarious reasons. So we were onto that. We basically caught onto that finally. And we started creating our own calendar. And basically, this is based on the earth and the sun and numbers and nature. So what it does is it allows for more natural rhythms for people to co-create in. It allows for more emergence. It's for balancing being and becoming. It's to help enable creation to flourish in natural time. So like, when is the project due? When is the bridge due? Is it due on January 15th, or is it due when it's meant to be due and when it's ready to be due, and let it be built in natural time, under natural conditions, so it's optimal?
Okay, so in a game, there's a way to play the game. So how do you play this game? So this is what we call the co-creator journey. It might be also known as a user journey, but this is the process that a co-creator in the Infinite World game goes through, and they undertake this through using technology, and it happens in life too. So this is an overview. I'm not going to go into detail, but the first part moves away from, again, the paradigm we're in, to starting with, who are you? What is your purpose? What are you here to do, and how can you most express your creative genius? Not how are you going to survive, how are you going to earn a living? It starts with asking, who do you want to be in life, and what's going to make you come alive? So it's very feminine. It starts with a very feminine approach and inverts the paradigm in that way. Then you self-locate into quests. So you don't go and apply for a job. You find a quest that you're most excited about, and you locate into it, and then you synergize with the people on that quest, and then together you begin to co-create innovations. So people often used to say to us, well, are people going to do that? And we were like, yes, because we did. And number two, this is how the millennials think. We're surrounded by them. They want to do what excites them. They're driven by purpose. They're bored of doing stuff that doesn't bring them to life. And if I had a video.
Wait, one sec. I just want to add, since the panel was up before talking about the kids on their phones, and like you can't fight City Hall, they say in America. I don't know if that's a saying here, but you can't go against the tide. You can't swim upstream. So the first step is sort of like social networking for purpose. We call it lounging. Express yourself authentically. Find people that resonate. Share your gifts. So I believe personally what the young guy said here is, we're not going to get the kids off the phones. It's not just about technology being a distraction. It's also the future. So how do we most use it appropriately? And how do we turn it into a heart-based mission, a purposeful mission? And how do we also balance it with nature? Like the one woman was asking, that's why we have these hubs, and it's a whole systems thing. You're also going out in nature. You're not just on the phone all the time. So these are all complementary aspects.
Unfortunately, we don't have sound, but we were going to share Chris, who has created our technology. He's a millennial, and he was just bursting for this kind of lifestyle. And they're everywhere. We'll come on to what's happening really at the end, but there are a core group of 6, but we're surrounded by hundreds of people that come and stay with us in hubs. So this is not us making up stuff in our heads. This is real. This is a piece of art produced by one of those millennials in our team. And this is a hollow ship. And I can't go into it right now, we don't have time, but this is also moving out of the paradigm of hierarchy and bosses. You're getting a hollow ship, you've self-organized, but now, who's the boss? In our experience, people just sit in a circle and argue. Because what happens is there's no organizational structure when we self-organize. So hollow ships have navigators that help you self-organize into a structure. And then we have what's called the holodeck, which is a bit like a disco. I'm joking. But you get on the holodeck, and if you're in the center, then you're in your gift, and everybody's organizing around you. So in the hubs, we're in a circle, yeah, I'm not presenting to you. You all now gather around me. And Andrea's in the spotlight, which I don't really like. And they're in service to me because I own the gift maybe of architecture. But then we all shift on the holodeck when we get to the tech. Chris is in the center. So we have this omnicentric universe, not a top-down universe where somebody's more powerful telling us what to do. Again, this is the culture the millennials wanted. Is this me again? Yeah. The other thing about self-organization, and we discovered this through working in community, is that, yeah, it's great if Andrea says, I want to create a lovely piece of art, and that's all we'll do for the rest of my life, and we want you to do that. But the world needs things. So how do we also make sure that what we're creating is in service to what the world needs? These are what we call the game quests, and we develop what we call social acupuncture points. For those of you that do understand Chinese medicine and have had acupuncture, what we do with the needle is we go, where is the greatest point that's going to create some flow now in the system? And that's how these social acupuncture points work, and they're in real time. So again, we're not just developing projects based on some idea that we had to have it, thinking Brexit, I don't mean to be political, but life changes. There's a million variables every week that change, and these social acupuncture points change based on what the social body needs. So this is done by our social acupuncture point technology. You can see how we visualize this here. Like, you know, maybe the planet most needs right now to tackle homelessness. Forget everything else, that's what we need to do to really heal this planet and so on. So we're driven by what is needed. Getting a little bit like on my soapbox there, I'm sorry. I feel quite strongly about that. Okay, it's me again. All right. This is also quite, this is new for us to share. And this is probably the most complex part of our system. And it's going to take a lot of work, and there's been a lot of work, but how do we shift what we call success as a planet? Right now, we have ways of saying what success is. We normally measure it in growth. We normally measure it in jobs. We normally measure it in how much money we have. And I'm not talking about the people here. I'm talking about as a culture. As I said at the beginning, that version of success has us doing things that are not successful. Growth is counterproductive to a planet that needs to stop having its resources exploited. So we changed the definition of success, and we use these terms coherence and supercoherence, which again are inspired by Irving Laszlo. And what coherence means is that the organism is harmonic and the energy is flowing and life is flowing. And supercoherence means we're doing it together. So we have something called the coherence score, and everything in the system, in the game, we want to get that score up. And when the score's going up, we're winning as a living system. There's a massive quote from Irving, I won't attempt to read that. And there's some more David Bohm. Again, delusion arises when we are not sensitive to incoherence. The physicists were telling us that when we don't understand this concept, we don't understand how life is not able to regenerate. And we live in an entropic world where energy constantly is being lost. So this is at the heart of the game. And what I was leading into is when we come back to the past to do presentations, the thing that people most say is, and I'm gonna do an impression of my dad now. What are you gonna do about money? How are you gonna survive without money? This is all we hear. Well, I'm gonna get my slides back up. We think money is just a communication system. It's a point system that represents the value of things and enables us to exchange things. We thought, well, we're creating a new system, we'll create a new point system. And this new point system will tell us how successful we are being as living systems. And then if we're being successful, then wonderful. It means that we're producing things. It means that we're rested and we're healthy. It means that we're creative. What else do you need? So we shifted it and we created something called interacting currents. Again, there's some Chinese medicine philosophy here. Everybody surely here knows about yin and yang. And I spoke about this at the beginning. The universe, whether you're a scientist here, yeah, homeostasis. The universe is alive because of balance. If it goes out of balance in one way, one direction, something else goes out of balance. So living systems require balance. So these interacting currents kind of say, okay, hollow ship, how productive are you? Oh, great, we're really super productive, but guess what? How sick are you? Because you've overworked for hours and hours and hours. And the planet, how sick are you? Because you've been depleted and depleted and depleted of resources. So the yin current is super weak, and the yang current is super strong, but in a living system, they have to be balanced. So these currents manage in the organism our balance, and balance is at the heart of the game. So there you go. In an ergonomic game, excessive production equals excessive depletion. Game fail. I want kind of like the Family Fortunes buzzer to go there. Do you all remember that? Like, it's a different version of success. This is not working. This is not working in the world anymore. We are failing because we're excessively productive and we don't know how to rest. We don't know how to be. We don't know how to replenish the system. How am I doing for time? So here's an example of a current, and I'm getting a bit more into the fantasy world here now. The first current we introduced was the current for psychosomatic coherence. And for everybody here, I guess the way we put that simply is being in your heart. If human beings want to cooperate, if they want to co-create and they want to get out of like fighting, they want to get into sharing, we watched over and over. It's not possible when people are not in their heart. It's the biggest block to co-creation. So we might say we want to live in a more harmonic world. We want to live in a world where there's peace and people get on. But if you've got a wound, and I'm sure there are many healers here, it's going to come up. It's like, no, I can't do that. I don't agree. Because I have to prove something, whatever it might be. So we recognise that we needed to create a way to express how valuable our heart currents are. And this was this particular heart current. What you might call spirit fuel, for the tech people in here. Anybody heard of hollow fuel? Maybe not, I'll come on to that. In an orgonomic game, psychosomatic incoherence equals non-harmony. This has to come first. I just want to say here that I'm moving more into the technology now. Is anybody familiar with blockchain? A few hands. Is anyone familiar with the concept of a ICO? A few hands. So I maybe can't really share this so much because it's not such, we haven't got such a group here that are aware of these ideas, but essentially technology is moving us into a new way of funding companies, ICOs with blockchain currency. We funded our first company with Spirit Fuel, Consciousness. It was a quantum leap. And I'll just touch upon this. How do we create a measure of consciousness, what we call the heart's current, Hertz? Well, what we did is we created something called the Alchemy Suite, which is part of our game, and all the co-creators who brought on board to the Infinite World game recognise that they need to heal. Otherwise, they're not a thriving organism. We all know that when our energy's blocked, we're getting sick. So that we want to do that because we're orgonomic, we want to be thriving organisms. But secondly, we want to learn how to cooperate and co-create together. So all of them use this Alchemy Suite, which at a personal level is about personal transformation. At a social level, it's how we do it together. So, Brett, you're really angry now. You're making me angry. We can't co-create anymore. So how do we learn to mirror each other? Working with anger and healing anger. So actually I can hear Brett and he can hear me. This is crucial. I cannot overstress this from having worked in community. Human beings are not so good at this when you take out the structures in our experience. So we developed all these tools, and then here's a bit of an imaginary thing. We got together all the healers on the planet, the big ones, the transformational networks, the schools, Deepak Chopra, the Wayne Dyer School, Bashar, whoever your guru is, and we connected them all, and we started measuring the heart current. And we said, consciousness comes first, humanity. All right, I shall skip this one a little bit. This is another important current. This is really the equivalent of money. It's about supply and demand of resources. Anybody familiar with Jack Fresco and the Venus Project? Resource-based economies? Oh no, so that one's not going to help you all at all. So what we were looking to do is simply produce resources, share them openly, and distribute them based on what's good for everybody. We call it a resource-based economy. And we did that with the Essentials current. So Brett, here's Brett. We live this way right now. We had a philanthropist fund our project. He was a multimillionaire from America. And he said, what, you're all going to get different money? Are you kidding me? Like, Devorah's got $10,000 this month and Brett got £60. Like, that's not very fair. But it's true for us. We use this essential system, and what we do is we distribute resources differently every month depending on what's needed for the whole system to thrive. So right now, Chris in our team, if he's not doing so well and he needs more resources than me, I share them with him. We think like an organism. We're not separate from each other. We share. We know how to take care of each other. And this here is some kind of reports of Brett learning from his Essentials current. and how he was learning to receive and also understand where he might be excessive with his resources. Here's Brett's Economic Success Report. It's a different bunch of criteria, and I think he gets a bit embarrassed. He was a failure in that paradigm. He comes out looking quite different, and then he's his super coherence report. Do you want to share anything about that, Brett?
No, let's go ahead. And this is planet Earth's overall coherence score. So you can see the yang production is at 97%. We've mastered everything there is to extraction, consumption, selling, producing, all those active energies. But look at our yin was 8%. We weren't taking care of each other. There was wars on the planet. There was genetically modified food. People were not healthy. So as a whole, Planet Earth 2019 was looking pretty grim. Thank God for the millennials. with, of course, some guidance from all of us, wisdom. I'm not a millennial, so that's not me. Okay.
I think also, Brett, what we might do, because it's getting late in here and we've got the afternoon shift and I'm sure everybody's going to be tired, just maybe stay high level for some of these ones.
Okay. Do you want to skip to the...
You could still talk about it. I think we should just not go so deep, maybe.
All right, so besides money, every time we come back down here to 2019 or around this time period, everyone says politics. How did you guys make decisions together? They always want to know, how does a UFO with billions of people govern itself? So to be honest, the first thing we did was hire Donald Trump to design the system. No, I'm just kidding. He went back to reality TV in about 2024. And that's when the UFO started to really take off. So what we did actually is one of the things we designed was called the Vital Signs Monitor. And it was basically, here's the ontology: stewardship, distribution, fractal, collective intelligence, essentials, governance, self-organization, coherence. So this was like a global brain in a sense. It helped us see what was going on in the world, which is much of what Bucky Fuller was talking about as well. We need to see what's happening in order to make decisions together. In order to steward the earth together, we need to know what's happening.
I just want to... Okay, thank you. Just a little comment on this. The previous conversation I had when I came in, when we were talking about the role of technology, I don't know how much people know that the Mayans predicted that humanity would evolve with its technology platforms. So each era, as we got into the modern era, as we were getting more sophisticated with technology, it was mirroring our sophistication of our consciousness. So there's something to be said that when we all become connected, and I studied this because my background is in communications, when we're all connected, something can happen that we've not seen before, and that's what we're seeing with this global brain. We've got a few minutes, so I'm wondering, I think what we're going to do is now talk about technology. There's so much of this system. I think it's evident it's a whole great reality creation system. Barbara Marx Hubbard is somebody we work with. I don't know who's familiar with Barbara, but the Wheel of Co-Creation, this is organising our innovations. We produced so many ergonomic innovations that served us and served the planet. That's what happened. This is so significant, we're not going to be able to do it justice, but the Mother Fund is about unconditional love. Every system has a way to back up things that aren't working. And humanity doesn't really seem to understand that that's what unconditional love can be. When we're not working well, when we can't perform, when we can't function, also when we grow and we're not yet old enough to go into the world, we need a way to support each other unconditionally. The Mother Fund does that in the Infinite World game. Okay, here's some tech. I'm going to play this as I'm speaking.
Yeah, there's no sound on this.
It doesn't matter, there's no sound on this one. So when we came in here, we were... I'll put it on in a minute, I'm just going to speak first. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the problems we're having with current technology. You know, the middleman who's kind of getting in the way, maybe surveillance, security issues, they dictate how we interact with each other. We saw that issue, and we also saw the issue with the current databases that humanity is using, how they don't allow for us to understand interconnectivity.
And we won.
Just as I'm doing this, so we decided to redesign the internet. Sounds kind of audacious, but we decided that that made sense because we wanted a neural-based internet that was more organic and like the brain. I think, Ollie, you were talking about neural networks. Well, that's exactly how we saw it. Let's create a proper brain that's organic and ergonomic, and there's no middlemen. So we call this the ergonomic cybersphere. We're working with partners on this. Iron Man, this is kind of what it looks like. Who's seen this? This is what our technology looks like. You're not on a personal device just talking to yourself or your friends on your phone. This is about non-personal computing.
This is some of our technology prototype software as well.
So the idea of this technology is that you can use it socially. You're not just sat with your phone. We can use it in dorms. We can use it in virtual reality spaces. We can use it on our desktops. This is a very early prototype of NewMap. And we can start to get back into our bodies. And this technology platform allowed us to manage the whole game as one unified system. Oneness. It was about oneness, and this technology allowed that to be expressed. So these are films of us playing with our prototypes, but you can see, if you saw the Iron Man clip at the beginning, you could see how this data technology is showing us how we're going to be able to organize all these holons we've been telling you about, so that we can interact in a new way. So here's somebody in her office, or should we say her hub, organising her filing cabinet, but she's no longer on her little device. She's stood actually in a big starry galaxy, moving her holons around.
We go to the last one with the
Yeah, we're almost through this.
timeline.
I'm just going to have to get back to the view. I don't know why it came.
Sorry about the technical problem. I don't know why it's shutting off on us.
They're not going to come on.
All right, we'll leave it there. Just leave it. Oh, go to the last one, the timeline. Yeah. So how did such a game-changing concept become a real-world experience? Well, first of all, like I mentioned, the Infinite World game has been going on for a few years with a small group of people. Then it turns out right after this conference in 2019, actually some philanthropists approached us. They decided to catalyze the whole ICO, which we're calling an initial current offering. And that happens in 2020. Then by 2022, because we have all the resources to bring in more co-creators and more specialists and more amazing people to build the technology and build the platforms, we launched a Peace Center at the foot of Mount Sinai, which our friend Mona is actively working on right now. And this Peace Center finally put the call out, big style across the planet. The Infinite World game is in beta, and it's ready to onboard as many players that want to co-create and participate. And at this point, the technology gets built out more and more over the next few years, as well as other innovations start being created, energy devices, permaculture devices, and the people are working together as an organized system of people sharing their IP, formerly known as IP, sharing the abundance of the resources and working together. And it really wasn't much trouble from there to get to 2040.
And the other thing that kicked in there was intensification of environmental crisis. So all those students that were protesting, they just embodied to the game and put their energy into something constructive with us. We were excited about them. And here, once you have a unified fractal organism, as we said at the beginning, the results change. We change the system, we change the results. We were starting to see shifts in all areas of society, and I think they speak for themselves. I won't talk about that right now because we're getting close to the end. These are people that have spent time with us. It's a real experience to live in this type of reality. It changes everything, how you feel about life, and having the threat of your survival removed and knowing that you're always nourished and that you're sharing your genius. Amanda at the Synergy Hub said it was like going to the moon. She couldn't get back to Earth. And here we are.
These are
some of the teams. As we said, it's not just Brett and I who have been working on living this experience. Well, it's years now since we come from 2040. But back then, this was 7 years in, of people actually creating these ideas and learning to live them. Because unless we can live it, how can we come and tell you that it's possible?
And now the kids are playing the game. They don't have to go to school or get a job. They're co-creating with humanity. So they're learning. They're having all their needs met. And really, there's no reason to be off the technology because the technology is everything, including human technology. Yeah, that's the end for now.
Any questions? Thank you.